you know, I'm shooting all of the emotional parts. We've already talked about what we shoot, but and then I come home and I have usually we have about a terabyte of footage, and going through it, sometimes it's maybe I don't know, a month, several weeks at least from the time I shot the wedding to the time that I actually putting it together and looking at it again. So when I sit down and I start keywording and going through everything, I'm kind of relearning the wedding again. And when you're in the wedding and you're shooting it, my brain at least is firing like crazy, looking for all of the things going on and trying to stay one step ahead of what I call the action. So one step ahead of the bride and groom, doing the first look, things like that. My brain's always ahead. So when I sit down and take a breath at my editing bay, I get to kind of relive the day and see it from a different vantage point. Instead of a shooter, I'm viewing it as an editor, as like the artist getting all of his paint together and sitting it down like, okay, what am I going to create with the tools that I have available and with the color palette that I have sitting before me. And so I sit there, go through it, and start keywording and finding, the golden shots, the hero shots, and pushing it out from there and seeing it from a whole different perspective.
So while I was prepping this slide deck, I came across a thought process that says that editing is a transformative art.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I know. I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, because you can argue that you are taking an artistic approach whenever you're shooting, right? That's very clearly an artistic endeavor. We are framing, we're worried about lighting, composition. Of course, if you're doing this thoughtfully and well, let's like we all are at this point in our episode 7, you're all doing this now, right?
Mhm.
So whenever you look at it from the viewpoint of you're taking what you've already captured as an artist and transforming it into something, man, that resonated with me.
That's good.
So I
Yeah.
do want to start off with a quote from Francis Ford Coppola, which I thought it was a great one. It's the essence of cinema. Hold on a second. I need to move my bar thing. Oops, goodness. I always you lose your
Our
mouse.
screen is like covering part of the quote. We
I
can't see
know,
it all.
my goodness. The essence of cinema is editing. It's the combination of what can be extraordinary images of people during emotional moments or images in a general sense, put together in a kind of alchemy.
Right.
And we've talked about alchemy in this, and I was like, oh, that is true because you just take the raw ingredients and transform it into something something that tells the story. You're taking the pieces of the puzzle. You're taking like how many metaphors can we dump into this? So
Well,
should we just pick one and stick with it? You like in the puzzle?
that's just
Okay.
how I look at
You
it.
look at it as a puzzle. Let's do
Editing
that.
can break you or save you. It, when we're done watching this, go look up on YouTube the original Star Wars trilogy and how it was edited.
Mm,
The editing saved Star Wars. Star
mhm,
Wars would not be even a footnote in the history of cinema if it wasn't for at the time it was George Lucas's wife, and she added elements to it. I don't want to spoil it for you. It's a if you can find there's like little short documentaries on it on YouTube, but she came in and added elements that really created and rose or increased the tension of a certain moment, or the how much danger are we going to be in over here, how are we going to save the day over here, and the editing saved the
mhm.
entire film. So yeah, you can like be shooting, and sometimes I've shot weddings and kind of like at the end of the day discouraged, when I go home, like, they didn't have, 8-foot centerpieces. They didn't have a cake hanging from the ceiling board. And I'm like, I go home, like, I'm not gonna have nothing to work with. And I think one of those situations, Amber's gonna show later, is a film that, I mean, I knew there were good elements in it, but it wasn't like the most extravagant and luxurious wedding we had ever shot. But when I got home, it is one of the most tear-inducing films that I think I have one of my top 3 for sure, that just the emotions was there that I didn't even realize until I got home and start putting the puzzle pieces together.
Great. All right, so Garrett, what is the hardest part of any edit? There is
Do
there
you
is a hardest part.
do you have a picture of it? The blank screen. Sitting down after you've ingested all of your footage, you put it in on you've offloaded it, and you have it all keyworded and you're
Oh,
sitting there.
we are going to talk about, you're getting a little ahead, because I do want to talk about organizational structures and
Okay.
stuff like that
But
too.
yeah, the blank screen, just like staring at it, and it's a
Screen.
monumental task, especially when you're first starting out and you don't have a regiment of how you go about building your story. When you're first starting out, you're like, what am I going to do? I have so much story to tell. And yeah, the I could make an hour-long movie, but our main seller, the one the client bought, may be 6, 7, 8 minute highlight. And you're looking at like, how am I gonna find the best story out of all the stories I have in this film? How am I gonna choose the right clips to really tell an impactful, powerful story in a short amount of time?
So we just went through that, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit, editing yourself, because we have a film that we were aiming for 4 minutes. I think Garrett's first cut was 20.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and that's why I
so
called you and it's like, "Hey,
he's like, "You gotta come in here," and we just kept going through it and cutting and cutting, and we would just listen to it again and listen to it again and listen to it again and go back to another spot of it and listen to it over and over and over and think about the footage we have. So
that 20 minutes there was so much gold
I
in there."
know, he was like, "There's no way I can make this any less than 20 minutes." I'm like, "Well," so we got it down to 6 right now, and we're staying at 6. But anyway,
Yeah,
so this
client loved
is
it,
the
yeah.
client loved it, and that's part of it, and that those are the hard parts. So we'll talk about how we kind of came how we came together to do that later. But so these are the different types of processes that Garrett goes through whenever he first starts editing a film.
Right.
So your foundation is going to be, and this is just like the brief overview, but like getting your rough cut of like all your documentary stuff got done, like your toast, your speeches, your
Spoken word.
ceremony, all your spoken word
Yeah.
moments, all of the documentary stuff down. And then once you start going from that, then you rough cut, like just roughly throwing clips on the throwing, choosing the appropriate, beautiful clips to put on the timeline, fine tuning. Then you go through sound design, color grade, blood, sweat, and tears, agony, um,
Yeah, the spoken word
flagellation. What
that
else? Hatred, anger. Oh, you go through all the cycles of grief,
yeah,
and then you have a film.
like, Amber knows I'm getting close to being done when I'm sitting there and she hears me in the room like, "Oh, this is terrible. I'm awful. I can't do this." I'm yelling at myself for like missing shots, not missing, but like, "Oh, this is awful. This is awful. I don't know what I'm doing." And then she comes in and like, "Okay, yeah, you're about done and it's gorgeous." It's like I'm hardest
Yeah.
on myself.
Yeah, we all are. We all are. So anyway, so there's kind of the rough estimate of what we're going to be talking about today. Sound design we've already talked about,
Mhm.
and then color grading we're going to be talking about in the future, more in depth. I think it's just the very next one. So we're talking more about how to apply storytelling elements onto actually getting something on the timeline.
Right.
Okay. So preparing for the journey, you're going to need to organize. So Garrett, you want to talk about your organizational skills and methods. So
Yeah.
you come home and you have 7 to 10 SDCF cards, all kinds of cards. You have all these cards. What do you do with them? You offload them onto your hard drive and you make them very specific folders. And then now you have them in folders. You have all your assets there. Now what do you do?
So yeah, the folders, typically I just offload the entire folder and I just label them 1, 2, 3. Well, I'll label them if I know like my camera, I'll label it just, G for Garrett. And then when I have Amber's, A for Amber. And then all my aerial shots will go in a folder called aerials. And I'll name the folders as best I can. Like for instance, one folder will probably be a lockdown folder for like the lockdown of the camera during the ceremony, lockdown camera, the reception toast, anything where I had long takes and I was a lockdown shot, I put that in a folder. And then I will have, if I have like, sometimes I have a little RX0, little tiny, it looks like a GoPro, but it's a 24 millimeter little cinema camera that's great for like hiding places up near the front of the ceremony, things like that, made by Sony. And I'll put that in a separate folder. And why that's important is when you import that into your software, I'm still using Final Cut. It just works great for me. When I import those folders, it arranges the folders by name, and so I have the name of, like, Amber's footage, Garrett's footage, aerial, drone shots, whatever. It's all already sort of organized for me, so then I can not have to search and struggle to find where these clips are at. Now, organization is so important because it's a learned skill. I am not the most okay. Let's face it. I'm not organized at all. I am with my video editing, and I am with my photography, but
Currently,
currently, but that's where it stops.
it
Well,
was a learned skill
yeah,
though. In the past, you were not.
no, not at
So
all.
this has all been learned and you can learn it. So
Right. And so I have made the mistake. Like, I'm real excited about this. Maybe it's a project that I can't wait to get a hold of and start editing. So I'll just start grabbing clips and throw them on the timeline. And that always bites me in the butt later because I'll try to figure out, okay, where is the clip that goes with this clip that was taken right before it? And I have no idea. So in Final Cut, there is a way that you can make it's basically folders, but it's keyword collections is what they call it. So I'll have a keyword collection for prep, or sorry, I'll have two different ones for prep: bride prep, groom prep. I'll have a keyword collection for B-roll at the prep. I'll have another B-roll keyword collection for B-roll from the reception. Another one for B-roll from the church. And on Final Cut, you can, when you're looking at all of your clips together, you can make a selection. I'm sure other editing software has this too, to only show you the clips that do not have any keywords attached. So as I'm going through the footage and I'm grabbing a group and organizing it into a keyword collection of the, let's say, the first look, as I take those clips and put them in the keyword collection, they disappear from my screen. So the only ones that are left are the ones that don't have any keywords on them. And so I can continue to grab them and organize them until there's nothing left on the screen. And then I can turn that off and say, hey, show me all the footage. And then it'll again show me all the footage. And when I want to start of, let's say, the bride prep, it's at a beautiful cornfield house out in the country. I can go to my it's either going to be in my aerials or in my prep keyword collection. And so I can go there and it's right there and ready for you. And it's also it's a good, being organized gets you reacquainted with the wedding or any project really. Get you reacquainted with your subjects and where you've been, because maybe you haven't edited it, maybe you shot it a month ago and you kind of forgot a lot. So as you're going through and keywording it, you're looking through it, you're becoming better acquainted with it, and you're learning what elements you have to work with, and that's it. That's another great place to start.
yeah, because I mean, whenever you're actively working on it, just so you know, at some points we've done 50 weddings in a year. Some points we've separated and you weren't even at the wedding.
Right. Yeah.
So that's another way that you can become familiarized with the footage. And then you always you kind of start then by making sure that all of those clips have keywords so that you
Right.
know exactly what each clip is about.
Exactly. And I also have a keyword collection for all of the audio, spoken word audio. I'll have another keyword collection for my music. So if I need to go grab a piece of audio, grab a piece of music, I'm not searching on my computer. I'm looking for, that exact song. I can just go to the keyword collection and find it, or then maybe that exact toast or whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. So then the next step, I guess, is to choose the right tools. So you talked about you prefer Final Cut Pro 10. And so that's what you've used for a very long time. Whenever we started editing, you were using Premiere. And so there's not really, I know that people are very passionate about things in this industry, specifically what brand you may use of things, but there's no right or wrong. It's just whatever works for you. And so thinking about how your own brain works and how the editing software works is what is going to make the most sense for you in the long run. So for Garrett, that meant going with Final Cut Pro 10.
Right.
And he's looking at DaVinci, and there are many, there are several others, but the main ones I would say Premiere, DaVinci, Final Cut Pro 10. Like,
Yeah, and I would suggest, if you're just starting out and you're trying to find something to use, All of these software that we're mentioning, I don't think Final Cut has a demo, but I know like DaVinci and some of the other ones, they have like a free demo that you can try out. And I would try playing with all of them because like right now, if you go on YouTube and you're like, what's the best editing software?
Yeah.
You're gonna get a lot of DaVinci stuff. DaVinci, I don't never used it. I've heard a lot of great things about it. For me, Final Cut works because they have a magnetic timeline, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I for whatever reason, my brain works better with the magnetic timeline, and it has always worked for me. I need to learn how to, at least investigate into DaVinci because have some friends that say it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I haven't used it myself. And when I'm getting ready to edit, I want to get work done, and I don't want to learn a whole new program right now. So I just fire up
Mm.
Final Cut and go to town because I know how to use it because I've been using it for gosh a long time.
I forgot one thing about your organization. You also need to make sure you have backups of everything. So it's like I hope you all know about the 3-2-1 backup, having 3 copies to two different types, one at least offsite. So we used to, whenever we were really deep in the trenches, filming a wedding every weekend and having just terabytes and terabytes of footage, we would take hard drives to the bank security deposit box.
Yeah,
Because if we were to be sued for a wedding and not maybe having the footage for it or something happening, I mean, that'll put you out of business. So
right.
that's one thing I
Even if it's
forgot to
not your fault,
mention.
like even if like
Yeah.
God forbid, house fire, tornadoes, something like that,
I mean,
a
there's
big
a
storm. Yeah,
global warming, all the emergencies that are happening, you need to make sure that you have all of your assets protected. That was one thing I was going to mention and I forgot to.
perfect.
Okay, choosing the right tools. And then finally, so now your while Garrett, like while he's keywording, he reviews the footage. But then once you take it a step further and you start like syncing everything, so you're getting all your camera angles synced up and ready to go. That's like basically your next step. So you need to see, well, what do I have to work with? You have all of these puzzle pieces, but you need to start somewhere.
Right,
And so for us, it's always been, let's start with the foundation. The spoken word is the foundation for our films.
right. And that's
So
that's the backbone to telling a good story for our wedding films, at least. We used to just kind of do music videos, and some people do that, and it's easy, but it's easy and fun, but the story can be so much more rich and deeper than just a fun music video with everybody looking happy and dancing around. So the spoken word, especially if you get lucky and you have, amazing vows, or maybe the officiant says some just beautiful things, usually at the toast. Yeah, you're going to get the guys who are always like, hey, remember that time we were drinking beers in the back of the truck and we went out and shot some golf and I don't know, I put a golf ball through your window. They're going to tell funny stories, but usually towards the end of their toast, they will have something really heartfelt, and that's kind of the little gold nuggets. So after I sync all my cameras, I will start doing a multicam edit and just going through, and I'll cut out the really nice and gold parts of it and add that. And if I'm gonna go,
force them outside.
I'm gonna go
Is
take a
it
dog.
bugging you? Yeah, he's just
Our little dog, he's in the other room, but he's like, I want to be out there with you guys live on B&H, but I'm gonna go take him outside real quick. I'll be right back.
he is losing his mind, and I was doing okay, but I was wanting to make sure that I didn't know if you were or not because this is more. So in our I guess in our structure of our business, Garrett is our creative editor. So in the past, I will do like rough cuts of things like the ceremony or the toast, and I will go through to kind of like whenever we're really in the deep of it and are just have a ton of backlog. What I'll do is I'll go through and go through the ceremony and cut out what I think might be the best, and go through the reception toast and cut out the best so Garrett can review those later, or he likes to do it whenever he has the time. So it just depends on what is happening. But those are the types of things, like if you have backlog, you can, have somebody help you that may not know anything or a lot about editing, but they can help you like go through and say, well, at least these are nice pieces. So I didn't know a ton about editing, but I could at least clip out the best parts. And then, one thing that I do like to keep in mind is whenever you say like you want to use the maid of honor's toast, I think it's good to make sure you balance it with like the counterpart, the best man or the other maid of honor, or whoever the parallel counterpart is. I like to make sure in films, I was just talking about how it's good to make sure you kind of have a balance of people who are speaking to, like, say if you use a bunch of maid of honors toast, it might be good to throw in a couple lines from the best man
Absolutely.
or the counterpart, because sometimes it might make them feel like, oh, well, why didn't they use mine? And that you don't want anyone to feel like have any possible negative emotions about watching your film. So a lot of those things can be kind of taken away if your couple like pays for the full ceremony or full toast and as a documentary edit of it, so you don't have to worry about it as much. But some couples are like, why didn't you use what I said? Why didn't you use my mom instead of his dad? And it's just, it can get weird. So just trying to strike a balance with the people that you show
Correct.
in the film, especially with the spoken word, can help.
Yeah, because you know, the people, your clients, they're not, sometimes they look at it as from like, well, why didn't you include this, this, or this? They're looking at it differently than you look at it as a storyteller.
Right.
So if you set yourself up for success and
Mhm.
figure out a way to include them, even if maybe what they said wasn't as profound as somebody else's, but maybe they had a cute little story or a cute moment, you can put that in there to bring some levity to it. And if use their strengths. If somebody was telling a funny story and laughing a lot, then you can use that to offset some of the more deeper things and tell a better story and still use all of the um,
VIPs.
VIPs. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes I feel like you've even used like the very last line from a groomsman, like a cheers to the couple or
Yeah.
something like that. So, I mean, we don't always get gold.
Right.
So you got to
Like,
use what you
I've
have.
literally like that was the only part of it I used, but he's in there.
Yeah,
I mean, he's in there other times too, but his voice is in there, like,
yeah.
and we'll tell all the really nice, deep story or whatever, and then when it comes to like we're at the end of the toast, and then I'll use what that clip that she just mentioned, like, and here's the bride and groom, yay, and then I'll bam hit into a fun, exciting, high energy music, and we go onto the dance floor or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we always kind of make sure we kind of balance. And that is something that, you have to think about it and not forget the reason why we're there in the first place. It is to capture something beautiful for these people, not to make your portfolio better.
Right.
So just because you have a better shot of somebody else, you need to make sure mom is in there. Okay.
Yes.
So whenever you go to start crafting the narrative, there's these are kind of just like the boiled down three things that we think of. One of them is the vibe, like whenever you go to select your music or to start figuring out like what type of pacing and rhythm you want your film to be. You want to think about, we talk about that a lot, but that's really what it's all about,
Yeah.
right? If you don't understand what we're talking about, then you don't understand what wedding films, like, you have to be able to nail the couple's vibe.
Right.
And
And then we have
that's
couples that ask us, they'll be like, okay, so I see you did this video and it has like kind of edgy music in this one, and then this one over here is country music. How do you decide what music to use for our wedding? It's like, well, we hang out with you for like a whole day, like 12 hours from getting ready to driving off in the car. And in that time period, we're going to learn a lot about you, and we're capturing you in your native environment, with your other, well, I mean, it's kind of like that analogy I used here a while back, where you're in the forest with all the jungle with the gorillas, and you're on the outside and you're taking photos and trying to just capture them being gorillas and just hanging out with each other, and you don't really want to insert yourself in the middle and change things up too much. It's kind of the same way. That's how you start the beginning of the wedding day, and you're watching them, observing them, kind of music. One we did here a while back. She had um, canvas shoes for the reception. I think she actually wore them during the wedding too, because her
Mhm.
dress covered them.
Yeah.
And all of her bridesmaids had written something on it, and her sister wrote something on it that was a little explicit. And so I knew, like, okay, I can have fun with this one, because they're a fun group. They're not as, I mean, yes, they had serious moments and
That was the
tear
beginning,
jerkers.
like, of the figuring out how they were going to
Right,
be,
yeah.
but then, like, the shots were flowing at 10 in the morning and we were like, okay, we know what this is going to be.
Mimosas were being poured.
I mean, I remember that shot, and
Yeah.
then the bridesmaid went and took the shots down to the groom's. Yeah. So anyway, it's fun, and so those are the type of cues you can use. It's not, it that's also a skill. Like maybe we've always not always nailed it, but I think probably we have maybe one time.
Yeah, you can feel their energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you have to start thinking about the story arc, the things that we were talking about, like the spoken word thing. Oh, hold on a second. I think these are, this is just, yeah.
There we go. We had slides for all these things. We had
Okay.
ourselves.
And then for the story arc. So those are the types of things. I really liked how it put this, the anticipation, the climax, and then the celebration. Like
Good job.
beginning,
Yeah.
middle, end.
Mhm.
Like these are the types of this. It's the basic fundamental storytelling flow, beginning, middle, end.
And I like to think of my story as a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I want valleys and I want highs, but they can't all be highs. Like you can't start with really high energy music and then keep that energy going the entire time. It'll get stale quickly. So I like to let my story breathe. So I may start with I'm saving my big high energy celebratory song for the last song, like the highest energy. That's when the volume's going to be the loudest. That's when the dancing's going to be the greatest. The emotions are going to be flowing.
Usually the cuts are faster.
Right. It's
You know.
like when you get on a roller coaster. If you just went to the very top and then you just went down and then went back up to the very top again. If you stayed at the top, okay, it's a great view, but this is kind of boring. So you want some continuous highs and lows. And when I say lows, I don't mean like sad, just a little more tenderness added to it. So depending
Softness.
exactly, if the bride is getting ready and she's getting her makeup on and everybody's laughing and having a good time, then your energy is going to be a little higher. If they're a little more serious, they're putting the final bit of lipstick on and the mom's over there clutching her pearls like, "Oh, my daughter's so beautiful." That's time to use a little tenderness and softness to it. And then, you from there we would go maybe have a little, like she mentioned, the anticipation. So you show her getting ready and then the groom getting ready. And then usually if
Sometimes back and forth a
back and
little
forth,
bit.
and then if you're having a first look, you'll show I never like to show the first look first. Like I don't want to show like, okay, now's like they were getting ready and then boom, first look. I like to tell a story that will build anticipation. So we show them getting ready, and then of course, it takes him 10 minutes sometimes to get ready. So we'll show let's call it the journey of him walking to the first look spot. So I may put my camera on the ground and just get some shots of him, the last few things, tying his shoes and then walking away. We'll get him going to um, like, let's say it's Southern Indiana. There's a big shade tree on the family farm. So you go out and you stand underneath and you show him going to the tree. You show him standing there and he's nervous. It's his first look. It's the first time he's going to see his bride in all of her glory and her bridal gown. And so he's probably fidgeting. They always fidget, maybe with the tie, maybe with their cufflinks. They're looking around. They're awkwardly laughing, and he has all these emotions and feelings. So we show that, and that's building anticipation. And then one of the things I like to do is as he turns to look at her, and I come back and shoot it later. I don't have to shoot it during the first look. The actual first look, we're probably
Keep going, baby. Keep going on your
what
story.
yeah, what medium and wide. But then I'll cut to a shot that I shot later. But it's like of just her feet walking through the grass. So you kind of getting these little glimpses. And then my shot, I'm usually the one who is shooting the groom's face as he's facing away from the bride and she's walking up behind him. And so I have my aperture wide open. I have his eyes in focus, and you see this angelic white being in light in the background slowly coming up towards him. And you can tell it's the bride, it is, but you can't see all the detail. You can't see her dress. And then as she comes up and he taps him on the shoulder, she turns around, and then I'll cut to the wide shot, which is usually on Amber, and it shows the two of them coming together, and then all this emotion just rushes out of both of them, and they laugh, they kiss, they hug, they embrace, and then we go back to tight shots of them wiping tears. It's such a powerful moment. It's That and like the first kiss are a couple of the most
My
powerful
notebook.
moments. Sorry, I just dropped a notebook. But yeah, that's a really good way to build that anticipation. That's another reason why I don't like showing the entire wedding dress. Like I used to go out, hang it in a tree or hang it someplace nice, and then get a bunch of like, gimbal shots going around it and things like that. But I like to just hint at the dress. So you never really see it until she's in it and she's perfect. The dress is perfect. It's the first look, or maybe the first time you've seen it is when she's walking down the aisle. I want that first look, or the first time the viewer sees the bride and sees the dress just to be perfect.
Okay. I kind of got lost on where we are. I'm not sure because I did not anticipate you going on to just a whole editing one
Whoopsie.
thing.
I get excited about
So okay. One moment. Okay. Yeah, you got just a little bit ahead.
I tend to
Okay.
do that.
Yeah. So can we go back to talking about the story arc? So we have anticipation. So they're getting ready, they're getting ready, they're getting ready. Most of the time, your climax is going to be, first kiss or something like that. These are all like most weddings are going to be the same no matter what.
Yeah.
Like depending on, they're always going to get ready. They're always going to come together and have some sort of ceremony, and they're generally always going to celebrate. And so like if you follow that, you're going to have a good film,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You're going to have a good film. That's just the way to get a very good film that tells the story from beginning to end. So the things that we are going to talk about now are things that you can add to that to make it elevated. Things like character introduction. So we've talked about it in a couple series past or before,
Episodes, yeah.
a couple episodes previous. Yes, thank you. But like things like not just your people as the players, but the weather, the animals, like Bruce Wayne the Great Dane was there. A vehicle could be like any number of things. The venue could be the character. So you're introducing all of these characters first. Where are they? You always kind of want to show what is going on, right?
Mhm.
First thing.
And a
Where even are they?
Right. And a good way to think about it is it's easy to get caught in this editing style of you're editing for the family and the family knows where they're at and the family knows who the people are. I like to approach it from I'm making a film for somebody who has no idea who these people are.
Mhm.
So I am doing character introductions very gradually and character, I mean, development as much as I can at a
Mhm.
wedding day. So little things of, like before when the bride's getting ready, I will rarely show like her face to begin with. I'll show little hints and little clues of who we're talking about. Like if she has, the a lot of times I'll have the shoes that say bride on them. And so I'll maybe start with that before actually introducing the bride and then showing elements of the bride before showing her exactly.
Okay. So we have the characters introduced now, and so we have to so we've shown the setting where they are. We show who we're talking about, who are even these people, and then we're showing them getting ready, building anticipation. We show the climax, we show the celebration. Okay. So we're thinking about the key moments of the day that you're capturing, like the first look, that Garrett was very excited about. And then very similar from all of these things, like the letter reading, like, getting all of the key players helping get ready, things like that. So all of these types of scenarios are going to happen in every wedding. So, you can, I hate to say it, but we have a formula.
Absolutely, yeah.
You
A
have a
recipe,
formula,
yeah.
a recipe, that's what it is, yes. We have the recipe. Just plugging in the different people, you will have very different results. Plugging in the different music, the different color grading techniques, all of those things are going to give you a different, let's say, uh, m- finished course
Right,
at
yeah.
the end.
Mhm.
Um, so whenever we talk about story arcs, one thing that you can do, and what we're getting ready to show, is what we call it cold open, a way to start the film. And that's, literally what it is. not really showing anything at all.
Right.
Like literally
Just-
the opposite of what we just said. Showing nothing. Just like trying to like, it's hooking the viewer in to say like, oh, what is that?
Right.
So that's the cold open. And then we're going to talk about time shift theory. So this is the film. I can't remember the couple's name right now, but she's getting ready to say it. But this is, I believe we've even talked about this in one of our previous episodes as well.
Yeah.
This is the mom who wrote the poem, and this is the poem, and it is so good. So this is it. And this is what we would consider a cold open. And then you're going to see a lot of the different types of editing,
Things we've just been talking
things
about.
that we've
Yeah.
just been talking
And
about.
this isn't the whole film, right?
No, it's just the first couple minutes.
Okay.
So you're not going to see the celebration, which honestly, the celebration is really super cool. Maybe we can drop in the film in the comment section, or just let us know. But it's a really, really amazing film. Okay, here we go.
I prayed for you. Already in my arms were two dressed in blue. I prayed for you, a little girl, to make complete my whole world. And God saw fit to say yes, to add to the blue a pink little dress. The sweetest of babies I would treasure with a love that would grow beyond all measure. To the moon and back I've loved this little girl, who down my hall would dance and twirl, saying to me, watch this, Mom, watch this. I would clap and cheer and envelop her with a kiss. But time flew by and my baby became a lady, strong, creative, caring, and wise. I was awed by what was happening right before my eyes. Before I knew it, she loved another. He was the heartbeat of her life, and in God's timing, she'd become his wife. I'd prayed for him too, all of my life, for God's chosen one to make my baby his wife. And so it will happen on this special day. Your dad and I will give you away, but all is not lost. You're not really gone. We've just gained an amazing son. Ready, baby girl, to give this thing called marriage a whirl? Your dad's ready to walk you down that aisle, and I'll be at the end to meet you with a smile. Together we pray you'll have a beautiful life as Mr. and Mrs. Hurtley, husband and wife. All our love forever and always, Mom and Dad.
Okay, open.
Oh. You look.
Do you love it?
I do. You look pretty. You look pretty. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Oof.
So then we were getting ready to go into the ceremony show. So what did we do there? We had the cold open. So literally we got that's the hook, the thing that's going to bring the viewer in, this mom's poem. Then the first thing we do, show where we are. What are we doing? Who's there? Some of the details, just building. And then I loved like that poem, man. Woo! And that was one where we were just like, what are we getting ourselves into?
Yeah, when she said she wrote a poem, like, okay, here we go. I guess we'll shoot it, but it's probably gonna be corny, maybe real corny. But we got in there, and like after she read it, we just were silent, and we were like tears, dripping down my cheek. I'm like, oh my god, that was so. I knew immediately this is gonna be a good film. But one of the editing techniques I did
Chelsea and Brandon. That's
Chelsea
it.
Brandon, yeah. Is like I introduced. It was the first look with the father, and I didn't really show the father until she mentioned the dad in the poem, and then when she mentioned that and that that they were waiting, the shot of him looking out the window was set up. I had him just stand in front of the window, and I said I'd give him a little bit of coaching. I was like, hey, can you just kind of stand in the window and just let your mind get lost in thinking about your little girl's big day. And so he if you give them something to do, because these people aren't actors. So if you tell them to go to the window and look out the window. They're gonna go to the window and start doing this probably like, okay, I'm looking out the window like a
Mhm.
weird chicken or something. But if you tell them to go look out the window and just get lost in thought and just think about, he's getting ready to see his beautiful baby girl get married away, you're going to evoke emotion. It may not bring tears, but it's going to bring genuine, true emotion to your film.
Yeah. I mean, that was so sweet. And then, part of it, like the audio on the dad was not perfect,
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't.
but
It
it
wasn't
doesn't
perfect.
matter.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, well, it's outside and it's what's happening. And so there are some times when that did that bug you that it wasn't perfect?
You know what? It did it when I was editing it, but over the last, I mean, this is a few years old now.
This is probably at least 7 years old.
Yeah. Every time I watch it, I forget about the audio because I'm emotionally invested and lost in I'm emotionally lost in what's going on.
I mean, he's
And
crying about
yeah,
his baby girl.
he
God.
he couldn't even get the words out. He's like, "You're beautiful." He's like, "You're oh, just come here, give me a hug,"
Ah,
and
so sweet. So sweet. That was a good one. That was a really good one. I liked that wedding.
yeah, that was
And the
great.
doggy.
Yeah.
Their doggy. Oh, I think that was at the winery. Okay, anyway. So basically once we have our story arc kind of laid there, then you start adding in the reactions, the details, the venue shots, the B-roll over the top of it.
Yes.
The things that make sense with it. So we saw like Brandon comes into it whenever she starts talking about her future husband, and then you cut to Brandon. It's really that simple.
Right.
It's really that simple.
It's something or at least I kind of, it's a trap you can fall into when you're first starting, is thinking you have to shoot all the cutaways and B-roll while the main thing is happening. You can shoot out of sequence. Everybody shoots out of sequence. Hollywood, everybody shoots out of sequence. So like for that first look, we were locked in on the bride and we were locked in on mom and dad. And we would just let it roll and we were shooting. We're not those shots of them walking through the grass, that was taken later. I had them reenact that. Them coming out of the house, I had them reenact that because I just want to make sure I don't want to be shooting a weird shot of, well, not weird, but just a B-roll shot of them walking through the grass while maybe the bride's crying over there or something like that. So on big events like that, first kiss, first dance, things like that, we're locked in on the action. And then if I need pickup shots later, I can have them, do something different and get it when time is a little more lenient and in your favor, and you don't have to worry about getting the shot of, the first kiss or something.
But don't be afraid to let those moments breathe either, because a lot of the times you'll
yeah.
find, like, because of the nature of weddings and the rushedness of it, like it would be easy for us and the photographer to rush the dad and say, let's go, we got to get the pictures going. But to let them just like literally just take a step back and just let them be for a second. Because you think about it too, I do the same thing with first looks as well with a couple. It's like, this might be the only time that they get to see each other together alone, with the paparazzi, but alone for the rest of the day.
Right. Yeah.
So just let them be. You can get your pictures, but let them be. And a lot of the times we get some amazing stuff. Sometimes they're just like, okay, now what do you want us to do?
Yeah, they'll
And that's
awkwardly
fine
kiss and
too.
then look back at the camera. Are we done? Like, what's going on?
And a lot of the times I'll even coach the couple. I'll like, okay, just enjoy each other for a little bit.
Yeah,
You
just-
don't have to worry about us. Enjoy each other for a little bit. Whenever you are ready, we will go.
Right. Yeah.
So making sure, letting them know when you are ready for this moment to be over, then we will be ready.
And that's a good way to control the energy. I know sometimes you're really rushed. I mean, every wedding you're rushed, and so you're tempted to be like, okay, we got that. Let's go over here and do the creative look. Okay, we got that. If you just kind of like, especially in the first look and the creative session, is just let it breathe and let them be together. And if they are, like she said, a lot of times,
Sometimes they just
they're awkward and they're not actors and they don't know what you want and they don't know. They're not used to having paparazzi all the time. And so if that's the case and they're just looking awkwardly around, I'll give them a little bit of instruction and I'll be like, okay, let's, how about you guys just walk down this path that's full of flowers? Just walk to the end of the path and then turn around and walk back. Pretend nobody's here and just look at each other and smile. Try not to talk to each other because I don't want to see slow motion of somebody's, talking, their mouth
That's a
opening.
hard, if does anyone have a nice way of saying
Yes.
stop talking? Because
Please.
we would really like to know that.
Yeah,
Like, we need a nice way to say, can you please stop talking for like 2 minutes?
right, yeah.
Like, that's what I usually say, but it's just like never sounds nice. Because once you slow that down 75, 80%,
Yeah,
it works.
it does. And posing for like, okay, it's for photography, you can pose a couple in the perfect pose and it looks like an organic, beautiful, loving moment. Video, if they're awkward and
harder.
it's really hard because that awkwardness comes through on camera. So if you give them a job, like I want you guys, see that tree line? You're gonna walk to the end of the tree line, you're gonna turn around, you're gonna come back. That's all you gotta do. Just look at each other, take each other in, smile, think about it's your big day. And that gives them a very organic, very natural thing to do. And soon as they start walking away from you, they start looking at each other and they forget that there's cameras around for the most part. They forget that we're there and they're not posing, they're not acting, they're just being who they actually are. And that comes through in the film and makes it more organic and real.
So we were going on, but I was going to ask you, do you have any more tidbits you want to talk about with the actual building of the edit? Because we were gonna move on to like color grading, okay, like effects and then kind of the polish. So are there any any more key takeaways you would like them to know about like actually building the film?
First thing I do is like we talked about, I lay down the backbone, the spoken word. Um, Typically, I will then choose my music and I will lay the music out.
So you pull out the backbone before you choose the music.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and then I'll have, well, I shouldn't say before I choose. Oh yeah, yeah, I did something for a minute. I do usually choose and place the music. I'll choose the music. Sorry, backbone, music, and then clips. So I'll have like if I know it has to be, let's say a 7-minute highlight, I will cut the backbone, the spoken word out to fill that 7 minutes. And then usually I'll cut even parts of that out because I don't want spoken word during the entire thing. Like she said earlier, giving your film time to breathe. So there was a spot in the film we just watched where they were hugging and they were, the bride and dad were hugging and he was crying. And yes, I could have put more of her poem right there, but I just kind of pulled the music up off the floor just a little bit, get a little louder, and then maybe slow the motion down just a touch and let that moment, which is a beautiful moment, breathe so the viewer can be really get the full impact of the moment. And then once I have that, I'll go look for my hero shots. So my gimbal shots, maybe of the first look where I spun around them, the first dance, and whatever my hero shots are, my portfolio shots that I'm really, really happy with and proud of, I'll bring those down and I'll place those where I'm currently thinking they should go. So if I have, the first kiss, I know that's going to go at usually the music is going to fade away. You're going to hear the officiant say, "I now pronounce you Mr. and Mrs. Baird." And then when they go in for the kiss, the next song is going to start, usually a high energy song. And I know where that's going to go. So I can put my music there and I can put my clip there. And there may be no clips before it, no clips after it. But that's kind of like the foundation and the building blocks of the entire story. And then when we go to, let's say you had a really great shot of one couple we had, they had like it's an old vintage, like Rolls Royce limousine that was like from the 50s or something. And so I had a great shot of them outside of the venue, getting in the car and driving away. And so I see that, I put that at the end, and then I do my ring shot. I know that's there. So I'm starting to like tetrify, or I don't even know if that's a word.
We're back at, we're getting a different metaphor now.
Right.
So.
But those, okay, let's go back to the puzzles. So I have the piece of the puzzle. I'm like, okay, this is a good piece. Boom. Okay. oh, this is a good piece too. Boom. And so like if you're in a puzzle, like you see like the corner piece, like, oh yeah, and that goes here.
You already
see,
know.
you know where the corner pieces go. So you kind of start putting those on, and then you have the building blocks to a great, you have a great working foundation. And then as you're looking for more elements to your story, you can say, okay, so I have that puzzle piece there, and now this puzzle piece isn't the most iconic, crazy, epic, cinematic shot, but it fits with this piece because it's telling the same story that your portfolio
You know what?
piece is telling.
Sometimes you need a clip that's just blue of the sky, you know,
Yeah.
like in the puzzle. Sometimes a piece of the puzzle is
It's
just
just blue.
blue sky. And so you have to have all of those things in your film to tell the story, you know, like all of it lends to the building blocks.
Right.
That's-
And like I said before, like if every piece of the puzzle that you captured is epic, your film's not going to be epic because it's like being on the top of the roller coaster. It's like climbing the mountain. You're up here, okay, the view's nice, but now what do we do?
So one of the ways that help yourself with that is choosing music that lends to that. So a lot of the times, I think we've talked about this in our sound design one, but whenever he looks at, literally he doesn't even have to a lot of the times listen
Oh,
to
yeah.
the music first. Just looking at the waveform of the music is a good indicator. And then like, because if you like
Like
I
when I'm
know
on
I have,
website
you
searching.
know, yeah, on website searching, if you see a song that goes like this and just is, you know, it like starts and it's just flatline
Red, like
red
as
the
loud as
entire
it can be,
time,
yeah.
probably not going to work in the type of film that you're
Mhm.
going for. But you look for ones that have a lot of peaks and valleys, that where
Yes.
you can have multiple different like climaxes in your film, because you know, not, you can have like the big one, but you also have little ones. We're telling little stories throughout the whole big story. Like that whole fishing sequence was a micro story within the story.
Mhm.
You know, that's just telling you what type of person he is.
Yep. Is
You
that
know?
he has grooms. Those were all VIPs, you know, his
Yeah.
grooms when that, of course I had to get up early and go out fishing with him, but I think it was a great piece of the puzzle to have. Yes, I could have told a compelling story without it,
Mhm.
but making the additional effort to go out there with them, you get to
Mhm.
see again, see them in their natural environment. You know, so you get to see the gorillas out there playing in the jungle, and you're just kind of, you know, doing your photos on the side, letting them be who they really are, because like I said, they're not actors.
Okay, so for aesthetics, this is the aesthetic part of the quest. So you master your color grading. That is next week. That's all you. That's not
Yeah.
me. That ain't me. And then we do sound design. We did that 2 classes ago, so go back and watch that one. Then you add the magic with effects. And a lot of the effects, let's say the special effects that Garrett uses in the film, you don't even see them. You know, adding transitions, speed ramping, things like that, that just add the magic. What are some other of those magical things that you use, Garrett?
Um, like you said, sound design, speed ramping, some of the effects that nobody ever sees or appreciates is actually like removal of things. Like we had a bride who had a beautiful wedding outside on a barn, but that day there were like big horse flies flying around, and she had one land on her hairpiece. And so I just went in there and frame by frame took out the fly, things like that. If there's uh, you know, now with some of the creative AI stuff you can do, if you have a lockdown shot, you can kind of expand it, and it's easier to. There was one wedding where I added like there was beautiful stained glass windows and had a really wide shot,
Mhm.
and so I added like light rays
Like
coming
the
through the windows
atmosphere.
and
Yeah.
gave it some atmosphere, but it just looks like it doesn't. If it looks like special effects, you're doing it wrong.
Mhm.
I still want to do lifesavers in a film someday, but
You know, you know, and I always want to tell people, like, if you have a really nice Star Wars
a
wedding,
really nice one. Like
you know,
if you have a bunch of stormtroopers and you're into cosplay, I mean, I think we'd probably shoot it for free,
if the
right?
501st is there, we're there.
If our Lord Vader is there, we'll be there.
We're getting
And then I'm gonna do so many special effects, lasers, spacecraft,
Okay, one time we filmed a YouTube video and I was wearing earrings that were
oh,
this big
little
that
tiny
had
lightsabers, yeah.
and he made it glow. So they were just like that big. So those that type, but a lot of the special effects that you use are ones that you will never see. A lot like taking us out of the film, the frame, things
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
Like on my wide shot at the back of the church,
Yeah,
we're
things
normally
like
up
that.
front on the side and we're on tripods, so I'm removing that.
These are
Also,
just like making your film that much better, but it goes to making your story. It like because whenever you see us in the film, it takes you out. It
right.
reminds you that somebody's filming it.
Well, like the Book of Boba, you know, how many scenes did people pause and like, this is ridiculous, where you can see the set design, you can see 2x4s holding up walls
Oh, I
that
didn't know that.
yeah, and like
I didn't. That
and
was
if
my
you're
least
watching
favorite.
Game of Thrones and there's a coffee cup, a
Starbucks.
Starbucks coffee cup, that doesn't belong there, you know? And so take that same idea to a wedding film. You should not see the photographer. Sometimes you can't help it, but my goal is I don't want them to see the photographer. I don't want them to see a filmmaker. I don't want them to see a tripod. And so I'll do
Or a bag.
or a big bag full of gear or something. Yeah, I don't want to see that.
It is funny though, because back in the day, we used to count how many times we would see our van.
Yeah,
Like nobody
yeah.
knew, no, and so we would leave that in there because like nobody knew it was our van, but the Eyenamics van or the Eyenamics Hummer would be in the, we used to have
We used to have a big like red band.
we're
Yeah.
distracted.
Yep,
Okay, so
but-
back on topic. Okay, so we've added all the magic now, and then the last thing is the second look. Ooh, editing yourself.
Mhm.
That's hard.
It's hard, and I usually end up calling Amber in to give me a opinion, because you need an opinion and you need somebody to view it before you consider it done. Of course, I don't think any film I ever do is done,
No.
but you need somebody that isn't as close to the edit as you are, because you are, as the editor, doing maybe some fancy transitions or some clips. You're using clips you're proud of because it's form, let's call it form over function, like this amazing shot you have that's gimbaled and it's racked focus, but maybe it just doesn't belong in the story at all. I mean, I've hated have to pull some, I've had in the past, I hate it when I have to pull some of my clips because I know how long it took me to get that shot, and I know how amazing it looks. And like with my, if I would share it with my other editing friends, are like, "Oh, dude, that was a killer shot." But to the, let's call them normies, you know, the people who hired you, they like, yeah, it's cool, but it doesn't belong. So I'll call Amber in, like, "Hey, watch it. Tell me what you think."
When there's been a few instances too where I was like, where's the groom's mom?
Yeah, I'm like,
And so he's like,
whoops.
you know, so those are the types of things too, because there's so many different people and, you know, like you can't, like, and after so many different weddings too, it's like, gosh, how do you keep track of all these people? So having an extra person to even look at that can help you. And you're just so close to it. And honestly, though, I don't even hardly, I'm not looking for technical errors generally. I'm just looking for story and stuff, but also technical errors.
Yeah, you can't forget mom-in-law. You cannot.
No, you can't forget anybody. And you're also like looking for pacing and emotional impact and things like that. And I think we're getting close. All of these things we're doing is to emotionally connect with the viewer. So we're giving them something that is an heirloom. You know, it's
Yeah.
not just like we can make whatever film we want, but we want to do something more. And that's one thing that we've always discussed. Like we want to
Absolutely.
do something more. One thing that Garrett has always said is that editing makes you a better shooter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can usually tell when the person who give you the footage is an editor or not. Amber's had enough editing experience to know, and we've hired people in the past that don't edit but they shoot, and they're for the most part really good shooters, but you can just kind of tell that they don't have the bag of tricks, because like when I'm shooting a sequence, I'm shooting wide, medium, tight, or I know I'm shooting for the edit. And when you have a shooter who's not an editor, they're shooting more for like a doc edit, where a long form. And sometimes you need that, but for the most part, I want somebody like Amber who knows how I edit. She knows how she edits, and she's getting storytelling elements throughout the entire day.
Mhm. So basically, editing is storytelling. And so we want to start with organize. We're going to organize the footage. We're going to build your backbone with that first layer. We're going to add the aesthetics and we're gonna polish it up.
Right.
So
Now, we'll talk about this more on our color grading, next week or whenever the next one's scheduled. But, masking,
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So, doing some masking if you're familiar with that. And then, you can also do a little bit of vignetting. And I use masking and
That's all next
vignetting-
week?
Right. Just
2
to
weeks, I mean, in 2 weeks, not next week, 2 weeks.
techniques like that will help, pull people into your film.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about that later.
But we have always felt that the films that we're producing for these couples are heirlooms, and we
Right.
want them to be timeless too. We're trying to create something timeless for them. I just had one of our couples. She told me that their kids watched their film. Like that's my
Oh.
favorite story. Like it's been 13 years. My kids. We just watched our film last week. I always like, what did the kids think? They want to know why my hair's long and why daddy doesn't have his beard and why does grandma look weird and so that's the thing. But
The fact that we have teenagers watching films that we've shot when their parents got married makes me
I
feel
hate
so old.
stop talking about that. So I really liked this. It's
Mm.
editing is where movies are made or broken. Many a film has been saved and many
Yes.
a film has been ruined in the
Yes.
editing room. This is the director of Gremlins, but I really liked the quote. Inner Space.
Speaking of epic movies,
I know.
Gremlins.
I know. So there is that. And then with that, we want to thank you all again for having us. Editing is one of Garrett's favorite things.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's where your
The magic happens.
it's where it comes to
All the
life.
magic
It's
comes
where,
together.
all these puzzle pieces, and it's a little daunting, when you start putting things together, it feels like it's gonna take an absolute, eternity to put it together, and you can't really, I mean, I know where I want to go, but then when I'm sitting editing, I'm trying to, maneuver that direction with all these puzzle pieces. And what's cool is that, yeah, it's hard when you first start and it's a little daunting, but when you start that project, the more you get into it and the more you are invested into it, it's like I'll be editing. And when I first started, I'm like, oh, this is like forever. And then I'll get into it. And then Amber's like, it seems like out of nowhere, she's like, hey, it's 8 o'clock. You gonna have dinner tonight or what? I'm like, leave me alone. I'm in the middle of this. Like, don't interrupt me. I'm almost done. And so then you get to have, you get to see your film come to life, and you get to see a beautiful story. And it's when you get like halfway through it or 70% through it, the closer you get to being done, the more excited you become about it. And yeah, it's like I told Amber, I told you guys earlier, I never think my film was done because I'm like, oh, I could do this. And Amber comes and watches it, and she's like, Garrett, that's perfect. Don't touch a thing. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes she's like, hey, where did the mom go? Where's she at? But again, seeing those pieces come together is just a beautiful thing.
There's a
Very
couple
exciting.
questions, but one of them is a good one. Since there's a common formula, do you have a template?
I mean, the template, we tell the story very, very linearly. Like we seldom time shift. And I know for a while that was a big, it was really popular with telling the story by starting, like, say, with the first dance. And I have done that myself, but for the most part, I start and I edit as the day progresses. Like my template is the day itself. Like this happened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I add, like I said, the backbone to it, the spoken word and the music, and that's just kind of my template. Now, if something is different,
So like the mom's poem, like starting out with that is different. That's not the beginning.
right,
So that's kind of like the backbone though.
absolutely.
So using that as the backbone, adding stuff on top of it is how we go about that.
Mhm.
Whereas like we just basically use the general flow of a wedding as the template.
Right, and
Oh, so we say. So not necessarily, we don't have a specific like template in our editing software, but
up here,
it's in your
yeah,
brain.
it's in your brain.
Kind of like our shot list. Shot list is in the brain, templates in your brain. And then another great question is, do you make clips for the couple to share on social media platforms, vertical and things like that? We do. They get to pay for those.
Yep.
So they get a social media edit. Yeah, so we would generally, Garrett would just make a totally separate film that's like a 1 minute.
Yeah, like for Instagram
Yeah.
or something, 60 seconds. If they
A lot of the
don't-
ones that were we have shown during this series are our social media edits. Now, like the longer form ones are 6-7 minutes, but
Right.
sometimes you're just like, oh, I really liked this film. I'll just make one, you
Right.
know, because it's good for a portfolio, and you have to do that, you know.
And setting yourself up for success financially, I offer the social media clips as an add-on. And then if they purchase them, that's great. More than likely, I'm going to make social media clips anyways, but I would really like to get paid for them if I can, you know? So,
Because it's more editing.
Right.
So some people I know will just like take a clip out of their main feature, which is not what Garrett does. He usually just makes a entirely new one. But
yeah. And you know, in today's day and age with the content is king, you really need to post on social media to continue your business. It used to be, oh, you got to have a blog, you got to have, you know, a nice website, or you got to be on Facebook. Anymore, you need stories, you need reels, you need quick little tidbits and little bites of content, and that can be a lot of fun because you're using, you know, that's where you can use those gold moments, those epic gimbal shots, and the letter readings and things like
so
that.
we're not focusing as much on story. We're still like using micro stories in those, but we're
Right.
not focusing as heavily on story for the social as we are for the final films that are say 5 to 7, 8 minutes.
And we'll talk about this in a couple of weeks too, but also your color grading can add to the story depending on if it's bright and colorful. Okay. I gotta wait that. But it's like it's hard to separate editing from color
I
grading.
know
It kind of
it's-
goes hand in hand.
It's the hard thing. Like even the audio that we talked about 2 sound stages two ago. You know, it's all so intertwined. So, but you can't give them the goods beforehand.
Okay.
They gotta come back in 2 weeks. So I mean it's 2:10. I don't know. Derek, are you there? Do you have any other questions for us? I think that I just saw the 3 here. We'll just keep going as
You
long
guys
as
are doing such a great job. I'm like, I'm not even, let me not even jump on.
Yeah, I was like, well, these are fantastic questions, so I figured I may as well go ahead and
I want to go back to that template question real quick.
oh,
About the editing. So the day is the template, and then if you take that valleys and peaks roller coaster, and you take that and superimpose that over top of the day, that's kind of my template. I want up and down, and then up a little bit more, then down, and then way up, and then down a little bit, and then I want to end. I don't know if we mentioned this. I want to end on a super high. So I almost always end with the big celebration party, the reception, everybody laughing, having a good time. Just at the high, I want people to leave the film feeling so good.
we want people to leave the film with the biggest smile on their
Yeah,
face.
high energy, big smile.
Just watching it, you're just like seeing these people have fun. Like that's why my favorite part of the day is the reception dancing, mainly because I love to dance, but it's my favorite time to see other people having fun too. So like you just watching people having a good time. So
Yeah.
that's how we end every film.
Because you can't help have a great time when you're filming, you know, hundreds of people, or maybe even 50, whatever however big the wedding is. When you see them just let loose, and the bride, the groom, mom and dad, all the pressure of the day is gone. Everything went perfect, right?
No.
But the pressure's off, weight's off everybody's shoulders, and we're just having a great time, and it's a whole different experience than the rest of the day. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
I'm gonna sneak in one final question. I hope it doesn't, you know, kick us off into a whole nother.
It might,
Yeah.
Derek. You just never know.
When you say speed ramping, one question I always have, and this is always like a struggle for me. It's like you go out and it's like, you know, you're shooting something and you're doing video, and okay, well the majority of it's gonna be at 24 frames per second because I want to go more of like the cinema look. But then you're like, okay, well I might want to throw some slow-mo stuff in there. When considering that you might not just have one pace, when you might have a mix, you might have some speed ramping, how do you decide? I've heard some people say like, oh, we'll shoot at 60 frames per second because that'll allow you enough to like, and I'm like, how do you
Derek?
decide if there's a moment and you can't decide like, hey, I might want this in slow-mo, but I also might want this at 24
Easy
frames.
question.
Derek, I'm just going to tell you this could be an easy question. This could also be a 2-hour conversation.
Let's give it the easy answer. The easy answer that's quick and painless is shoot the entire day in 60 frames a second, period.
Okay.
120 is usually too slow unless there's a waterfall or some fast moving something, I don't know, but 60,
Sometimes you have, like, sometimes if we know they're doing like a pedal, so if we know there's going to be something high speed happen, we will go ahead and click it over to 120. Like if we know something, like they're gonna do a pet, like they're gonna throw flower petals, or they're going to do like, I don't know. There's been things in the past. I can't
Right.
think of anything at this exact moment, but so we'll go ahead. But 99% of the time we switch it to
we shoot the entire day on 60 frames a second because of
Okay.
things like that. I don't know, like I don't have like I don't know when maybe the groom is gonna have a tear come up and wipe his eye, and I can't switch it over to slow mo and then get that back. So I shoot. You're gonna use more memory, especially if you use a high bit rate. You're basically doubling. If you shoot at 24 frames a second, and then you decide, hey, I'm going to shoot everything at 60. Basically, you're doubling the space that you're going to be using. But if you do decide to use 120, at least on Sony cameras, there's what's called an S and Q mode, slow and quick, that you set it up for 120 or whatever you want to do. And so if you feel the moment is going to be a slow motion moment, it's literally one click on the dial. So you can even shoot, if you really want to, shoot 24 and then set up your S and Q button. So like, okay, they're getting ready to do first dance or whatever. It's literally one click of the dial and you're in 120.
Okay.
So for me, it works out very well to shoot the entire day at 60 frames a second. And that way I know, and keep in mind, let's clarify this. My timeline, my final product is a 30 frames a second product. It's not
Okay.
24, it's not 60, it's like 29.97 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that works well for, this is a rabbit hole. Like if you want to spend another hour talking about this, but all of my films, all of my wedding films,
This
are
is for
30 frames a
intense
second.
research.
Yes.
So for us,
Intense research and hundreds of weddings shot.
600-ish. So, and if you have a 30 timeline and you're using different frame rates, it all kind of meshes well together because sometimes we'll use 24 at the reception, so we are using
them
different
why.
frame rates to make it look different.
Right.
And it looks a little more staccato, and which is kind of really cool because we are also of the mindset we don't use ND filters on a wedding day. So we use shutter to mess with our exposure, which is, I know it's a little bit.
And if you're doing that on 24 frames a second, it does look very staccato, very broken, doesn't look good. But if you're doing it on 30, those few extra frames are just enough to hide that staccato. Now, you wouldn't want to do that with a fast action environment like sports or something, but with weddings, nobody is moving too fast most of the time until you come to the reception.
Yeah.
And so on a 30p timeline, the dancing, I like to get out in the crowd with the handheld camera. I switch it to 24 frames a second. And then when you put that 24 on a 30p timeline, it gets even more staccato and more kind of crazy looking, but it mixes with the energy of the handheld camera, with the energy of everybody dancing, and it looks and it fits with what's going on. You wouldn't want that look when she's walking down the aisle. That doesn't make sense. You're crazy. That's like, that would be like very, very off-putting. But to have that staccato broken kind of motion during the dancing, it looks amazing and it looks perfect. But yeah, everything we've ever done for the most part has been 30 frames a second when we talk about weddings, at least.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
we break
waiting
a
for a
lot of
camera
rules.
company. I want them to go back. I'm like, everyone wants to go faster, 120, 240. Can we come out with like an old silent film mode of like 8 frames per second? Like, come
Only if it
on.
comes with a handle.
Yeah. That's what I really want. And
That's
they're
the
not doing it. They're going the other way.
Well, that is the crazy thing because you can shoot stills in the same speed as you can shoot stills in 24 frames per second.
You can shoot. Our camera will do the A9 III will do 120 raw frames per second burst. That is insane.
That's wild.
That's insane. Yeah, so we don't have that much storage space.
Right. That is a lot.
That is
No
the
need for it.
problem. But I really like editing is one that it's a big one.
Yeah.
It's hard to even put in an hour,
It's so like, I'm sure there's somebody out there watching right now. It's like, you're crazy. That'll never work. That's insane. Why would you do that? That's not how I do it. And that's fine. If that's not how you do it, you do what works for you. There's the right way, and then there's your way, and then there's the way that works. The right way is the way that works for you, period. Like if it works, like I love Final Cut, I love the magnetic timeline. It works for me. Somebody else may be like, you're crazy. That doesn't work. It's crazy for me. That's fine. Use what you need.
Did we talk about sometimes we use like 3 different songs? Okay, we have to go. Move on. We have to go. We have stuff to do.
This
we have
should have been
more
broken up
parts
into
to
2.
come. We have
I
a couple
know.
more parts, so
We still have a few more parts as
we'll keep like an
well.
overtime list of like
I
the stuff that
know.
we brought up, and there we
I
go.
know. Well, I already have an idea for another one. I think we just need to have Garrett like sitting in his on his editing desk via Zoom and like actually putting clips down on the timeline. So maybe that's another idea for another
Yeah, I think
time.
that would be
So
beneficial.
let us know what you guys think maybe. But
There you
yeah, we
go.
appreciate you having us again, Derek. We really thank everybody. Sony, B&H, it's a dream come true. It's weird, you know. I mean, as 2 kids who, you know, ordered things from B&H and, you know, go to the store and take pictures, and you know, it's crazy to be
My
like,
first time going to B&H, I felt like I was the first time I went to Disney World.
It
I was just
was.
like, my mouth was open. I was just
It
looking
was.
around like, this is
We were there for
amazing. Can I
hours.
live here?
I know, we were there for hours, so it's really humbling and wonderful for us to be,
Yes.
you know, doing this for everybody and hopefully, you know, helping people learn some art.
And increasing their skill level in their
Yeah.
games.
Yes.
They can book those jobs and cash those checks.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
That's
Yep.
it. Yes, that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Sorry, guys, that's what it's all
Exactly.
about.
If you can do something that pays your bills, that you actually enjoy doing, you know, for the longest time, people are like, what's your hobby? Like, well, what I do for a living is my hobby. I'm fortunate in that way because I spend money on, you know, cameras and gear, and then I turn around and I use that to make more money to spend on more cameras and
And
more.
more gear.
Which, speaking of which, I need to pre-order the A1 Mark II.
Mm-mm.
There
Put
you
that
go.
on the list.
Get on that. Put that on the list. It's Christmas. And
Oh, and
Amber,
the 28 to 70.
28 to 70 F2.
Yeah, G Master. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, there you go. It's that time of year. We buy for ourselves. It's
Yeah.
allowed.
That's all I want. I only want 2 things for Christmas.
That's it.
It's just the A1 Mark II.
I
And
was
then
hoping
Wonder
for-
if anyone's listening. Wonder if anyone's listening there.
I wonder if anyone's listening.
Sony.
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 Well, on that note, we're now
Yes.
accepting gift lists.
Yes.
Well, I did get to play with it at Creative Space, and I was sold on it. So
We gotta let
That's a
Derek.
good
He
thing.
has another one to go. He has the next
You
person.
guys, look, I'm here all day. I'm not going
Ah.
anywhere. I'm gonna go, you know, make a little
all right,
snack.
well, let's just go right into the color grading then.
No,
Let's,
no, we're not ready for that.
A huge thank you, of course, to Amber and Garrett, Sony, for hosting this wonderful series, and all of our viewers out there. We do it for you all. Another edition of the B&H Event Space now in the books. Catch y'all next time.